The jungle was alive. Every branch dripped with water. Every leaf seemed ready to whisper secrets. Shadows moved even when the air was still. It was a place where the strong survived and the weak vanished. In this world, only hunters ruled. Jalira was one of those hunters. She was tall, strong, and feared. Her skin carried the marks of her tribe, sharp lines painted in dark red clay. Her eyes were steady, like the eyes of a bird waiting above its prey. She had hunted beasts with tusks larger than her arm. She had fought creatures that could swallow a warrior whole. And she had always returned with proof of her victory. But this time, her prey was not a beast. It was something stranger. A man. A human. The night before, fire had fallen from the sky. The elders called it a bad sign. They said the sky had spit out a thief, a destroyer, a stranger who carried danger in his blood. The word they used was harsh, invader. And to the tribe, an invader could only mean one thing: death. The council of elders met at dawn. They lit the old fires. They spoke the old rules. When something came from the sky, it had to be destroyed. It was Jalira who stepped forward. She did not wait for the elders to choose. She claimed the hunt. She wanted it. She would prove herself again. And so the hunt began. The jungle greeted her like an old friend. She knew its smell, thick with moss and rain. She knew the sound of water falling from the high cliffs. She knew how silence could mean danger. Every step was careful. Every breath measured. Her blade rested against her back. Her bow was ready in her hand. The signs of the human were easy to see. Footprints, clumsy and deep, pressed into the wet earth. Broken branches, where his strange soft body had forced its way through the green. Shreds of fabric hung from thorns, colored not like any cloth her people made. Jalira crouched low. She touched the prints with her fingers. They were wide. Heavy. They did not belong to someone born in the jungle. This creature did not know how to walk silent. He was easy prey. She almost smiled. The hunt would not take long. She followed. Hours passed. The sun climbed, then fell again. Yet the human did not act like prey. He did not run fast or hide deep. He moved with no sense of fear. Instead of covering his trail, he left more signs. A broken branch here. A pile of cut bark there. She saw wood stacked neatly. She saw pits dug into the ground. Jalira frowned. This was not the way of prey. At night, she climbed a high tree. From there, she saw his fire. Small, weak, but steady. She watched him from above. His body was strange. Too thin. Too soft. His hands were covered in dirt, not blood. He ate little, chewing slowly. And when he finished, he placed food on a flat stone near the edge of his camp. Food, left out in the open. At first, she thought it was a trap. But she waited, and she saw a small creature, nothing more than a jungle rodent, crawl forward. The human did not attack it. He pushed the food closer. The animal ate, then ran off. The human only smiled. Jalira narrowed her eyes. This was foolishness. Prey wasting food. Yet something in her chest felt unsettled. The next day, she crept closer. She watched him cut vines and weave them into lines. He tied the lines between branches. He stacked large leaves to form a roof. Piece by piece, he shaped a shelter. He worked until his skin was wet with sweat. His hands shook, but he did not stop. She thought he built it for himself. But when he stepped back, he looked at the sky. He spread his hands wide as if speaking to someone. Then he placed 2 blankets inside. 2. Her blade felt heavier on her back. Why 2? Why would prey make a shelter for more than himself? The jungle grew darker. A storm came. Rain fell like endless arrows. Jalira crouched in the trees, watching. She expected him to hide alone. But instead, he moved into the storm. He found a small beast, its leg broken under a fallen branch. She thought he would kill it. Instead, he lifted the branch, carried the beast into his shelter, and covered it with one of the blankets. The human ate less that night. He gave part of his food to the beast. Jalira pressed her teeth together. None of this made sense. A hunter killed. A prey hid. A stranger destroyed. That was the way of the world. But this man did not kill. He did not hide. He did not destroy. He built. And that was not what she had been taught. For 3 days she followed. Always in the shadows. Always silent. She learned more than she wished. He sang, soft and broken, in words she could not understand. He touched trees with care, as if asking them for help. He fixed the ground where he stepped too hard. He was weak. He was fragile. But he was not foolish. He was something else. On the 4th night, the moment came. She stepped on a dry branch. It cracked like thunder. The human froze. He turned his head. His eyes met hers. Time stopped. Jalira waited for him to reach for a weapon. She waited for fear to show on his face. But he did not move to fight. He did not scream. He only breathed out, slow and calm. Then, with hands that shook, he lifted the second blanket. He pointed to the empty space inside the shelter. He waited. Her blade was still on her back. Her bow still in her hand. The elders had told her to kill. Her tribe expected proof. But in that moment, she did not lower her weapon and she did not raise it either. Because something deeper than orders whispered to her. Why would prey make a shelter for its hunter? That question stayed with her as the rain fell harder. That question followed her heartbeat as she stood in the dark. She had hunted many times. She had killed without doubt. But never before had she been offered shelter by the very thing she was sent to destroy. And for the first time in her life, Jalira did not know what to do next. The jungle did not forgive weakness. Jalira knew this better than anyone. She had seen warriors fall because they hesitated for one breath. She had watched beasts kill the careless. Strength, speed, and blood, that was what survival meant. But this human was weak. And yet, he lived. Jalira stayed in the shadows after that night. She could have ended it then. A single arrow. A single cut. His soft body would not resist. She could have returned to her tribe with proof. The elders would have praised her. Her name would have risen higher. But she did not strike. She waited. She watched. The human woke early with the light. He stretched, coughed, and started his day with slow, careful movements. His hands were cracked and bleeding from work, but he used them anyway. He gathered water from broad leaves, filled small holes with it, and covered them with bark to keep the insects out. Jalira narrowed her eyes. Why waste time with such little tasks? A real hunter would hunt. A real survivor would kill the strong and eat. But this man's hands did not know killing. They knew building. She watched him sharpen a stick, but not for war. He used it to dig. He planted seeds, taken from fruits he had eaten. He covered them with soil. He pressed his hands into the ground, as if asking the earth to accept the gift. It made no sense. The jungle was harsh. Nothing waited for anyone. But he planted as if he believed in tomorrow. Later that day, he worked on his shelter again. He cut larger branches, dragged them across the ground, and tied them together with vines. His arms shook, his breath came heavy, but he did not stop. Jalira realized something. He was building not for one night. Not even for 1 week. He was building for many. He was preparing to stay. Her teeth pressed together. That was dangerous. If the elders were right, if the human meant to spread his kind here, then everything her tribe knew could be lost. One shelter could grow into many. One seed could grow into a forest that did not belong to them. And yet, when she looked at him, she saw no conqueror. She saw a man who fought against hunger, against storms, against loneliness. Not to destroy, but to live. On the second night, she moved closer. She crouched behind a curtain of vines, no more than a few steps from his fire. The human spoke to himself. His voice was soft, broken, but not angry. He touched something at his neck, a small piece of metal on a string. It looked worn, smooth from many years. He pressed it to his lips. He whispered words she did not know. Then he sang. It was not a hunter's song. It was not a war cry. It was quiet. Sad. His voice cracked, but he kept singing. And for the first time in her life, Jalira felt a sound touch her heart instead of her ears. The jungle listened. Even the insects seemed to pause. She stayed there long after he fell asleep. She did not understand his song. But she understood its weight. This man was not only fighting the jungle. He was fighting the silence inside him. The next day, the jungle itself tested him. A predator came long, black, and scaled. Its body slid across the ground like living rope. Its eyes glowed yellow in the shadows. Jalira knew it well. Silent striker. One bite meant death within breaths. The human did not hear it at first. He was too busy weaving vines into his shelter. But then he turned. His eyes widened. He froze. Jalira raised her bow. She could end it. One arrow to the beast's eye. She had done it before. But she stopped. The human did not run. He grabbed fire from his camp. A branch lit at the end. He held it high, shaking but steady. The silent striker hissed. It hated flame. It slid back, slowly, and disappeared into the dark. The human collapsed to his knees, chest rising and falling. He had faced death with fire and courage, not steel. Weak, and strong. Both at once. Jalira lowered her bow. Something inside her shifted. That night, he prepared food again. Small roots, a few berries, and a thin strip of dried meat he must have carried from his crash. He ate some. And once again, he placed a portion away from his fire. Jalira waited. This time, no animal came. The food remained. The rain began to fall. She thought he would bring it back. He did not. He left it there, soaked, wasted. Why? When he finally crawled into his shelter, she slipped from her hiding place. Silent, she landed near the stone. She crouched, touched the food, smelled it. It was not poisoned. It was not a trap. It was simply an offering. Her chest tightened. An offering to who? To the jungle? To the spirits? Or, to her? On the fourth morning, something changed. The human worked again, but slower. His movements were heavy. His face pale. He coughed often, shaking hard. His body looked weaker than before. He was sick. Jalira's hand tightened on her blade. A sick prey was easy prey. This was the moment. She could finish it now, with no fight at all. She stepped forward. 1 step. 2 steps. Her shadow touched the edge of his shelter. The human turned his head. His eyes were tired, but when he saw her, they did not widen in fear. He simply looked at her like he had expected her to come. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not run. He only lifted his hand, slow, heavy, and pointed again to the second blanket. Inviting her. Even as his body failed. Her chest burned. Every lesson of her tribe screamed at her to strike. Yet every part of her blood told her to stop. Why would prey, sick and close to death, still share its shelter with its hunter? That night, Jalira did not return to the trees. She stayed close, hidden by the rain, watching him shiver under his blanket. She could hear his rough breath. She could feel his weakness. She did not sleep. She did not strike. And she did not leave. Because for the first time, Jalira was not sure if she was the hunter. Or if the human was hunting something inside her. The rain did not stop. It poured for 2 days without pause. The jungle floor turned to rivers of mud. Trees shook under the weight of water. Even the strongest hunters stayed hidden in their caves. But the human had no cave. Only a fragile roof of leaves and branches. Jalira stayed close. She told herself it was because of duty. She told herself she needed to see if the prey would die. But the truth pressed inside her chest like a heavy stone. She wanted to see if he would live. The human was sick. His skin burned with fever. His breath came sharp, sometimes too fast, sometimes too slow. He left his shelter only to gather rainwater in small bowls made of bark. His steps were weak. More than once, he fell to his knees in the mud. But each time, he stood again. Each time, he carried water back to the shelter. Not only for himself. He poured some near the roots of small plants he had started. He even gave water to the wounded beast that still lay in the corner of his shelter. Jalira watched in silence. Her blade heavy at her side. Her bow cold in her hands. She thought of her tribe, of the elders, of the orders they had given her. Yet when she looked at him sick, fragile, and still giving, she could not move. On the third night of rain, the storm grew worse. Wind roared through the jungle. Trees cracked and fell. Lightning split the sky. The human's shelter shook, ready to break. Jalira climbed high in a nearby tree, ready to see it fall. She expected him to flee, to abandon his work, to run for his life. But the human did not run. He held the walls with his hands. He tied more vines in the storm. He pressed leaves back in place, even as water blinded him. His body shook. His cough tore through the night. But he fought to save the small shelter he had built. Jalira's heart struck hard in her chest. She had seen warriors fight with rage. She had seen beasts fight with teeth. But she had never seen someone fight a storm with bare hands, not for glory, not for blood, but only to keep something safe. The storm ended by dawn. The shelter stood. Damaged, but not destroyed. The human collapsed inside, too weak to move. He pressed his back to the wall, chest rising heavy, eyes half closed. His fire had died in the night. Cold wrapped around him. His lips trembled. Jalira knew what cold meant in the jungle. Cold meant death. She crouched on a branch above him, her hands tight on the wood. Her thoughts fought like claws in her mind. If he died now, the hunt was over. She could return to her tribe with truth. The human was no longer a threat. But if she let him die, then what was all of this for? The plants he had watered. The beast he had saved. The food he had offered to the shadows. The second blanket he had held out to her. It was more than survival. It was something else. Her body moved before her mind agreed. She dropped from the tree. The human's eyes opened weakly. He saw her at last, clear in the light of dawn. His hand did not rise to fight. It rose only a little, shaking, as if to greet her. Jalira froze. Her blade still hung at her side. But his eyes did not hold fear. They held something gentler. Something that burned her chest more than any weapon. Without a word, she stepped past him. She gathered dry wood, hidden under roots. She stacked it. She struck her blade against stone until sparks caught. Flame rose again. The human breathed deep. Relief softened his face. He whispered words she did not know, but the sound was soft, thankful. Jalira sat near the fire, her back against the wall of his shelter. For the first time, she shared the space he had built. For the first time, she did not hide in the shadows. Hours passed. He slept, his body weak but safe in the warmth. Jalira kept watch. Her eyes moved to the beast curled near the fire, its legs still wrapped in vines. The human had healed it as best he could. And it lived because of him. She thought of her people. They killed beasts for food, for skins, for weapons. They killed strangers to protect the tribe. That was the way. But here was a man who gave life in a place that took it from everyone else. What did that mean? When he woke, his eyes found her again. He did not speak, but he smiled. His face was pale, his body broken, but the smile was real. He pointed, weakly, to the second blanket. He had not forgotten. Even close to death, he had left space for her. Jalira felt her throat tighten. She did not understand this man. She had no word in her tongue for what he offered. But she felt it stronger than any order. She took the blanket. For the first time, she accepted. The human closed his eyes and slept again. Days passed. His strength returned little by little. Jalira stayed with him. She brought small game for food. He showed her how to boil water until it was safe to drink. She showed him how to sharpen stones into blades. He taught her how to weave tighter ropes from vines. She taught him how to move without sound through the forest. Bit by bit, silence turned into gestures. Gestures turned into sounds. He learned her name Jalira. She learned his Daniel. It was slow. Awkward. But it grew. One night, Daniel took the small metal piece from his neck again. He held it to the firelight, then passed it to her. It was a circle, worn smooth, with the shape of a woman's face on one side. He tapped his chest, then touched the face, then touched his chest again. His eyes grew wet. Jalira understood. The face was someone he had lost. Maybe a mother. Maybe a lover. Someone who lived in his heart but not in this world. She gave it back to him. But when she did, her hand touched his. Warm. Fragile. Alive. Something in her broke open. The jungle could not hide them forever. Jalira knew it. Daniel knew it too. Sooner or later, the tribe would send others. Hunters. Stronger, faster, and less patient than she had been. The day came with the call of horns. Deep, long sounds carried through the trees. Jalira stiffened. Her people were near. Daniel looked at her. He did not understand the sound, but he saw the change in her face. He knew what it meant. She stood, blade at her side, bow across her back. This was the moment she had tried to ignore. She was the hunter, sent to kill him. She had failed to obey. And now, her tribe would demand an answer. They met at the border of the jungle. A clearing where the trees bent low and the ground opened wide. Warriors waited, their faces painted red like hers, their eyes sharp. At the center stood the elders, old and unbending, wrapped in cloaks of bone and feather. Jalira walked into the clearing. Daniel followed behind her. His steps were slow but steady. His hands were empty. He carried no weapon. A ripple of shock moved through the tribe. Murmurs rose like buzzing insects. The elders raised their hands for silence. Jalira, one spoke, voice deep as stone. You were sent to hunt. You were sent to kill. Why do you return with the invader alive? Her throat tightened. The words she needed did not exist in her tongue. How could she explain what she had seen? The fire in the rain. The hands that built instead of destroyed. The blanket he offered, even as death pressed close. She opened her mouth but no sound came. The warriors stepped forward. Their blades flashed. Daniel froze but did not retreat. He lifted his hands, palms open, showing his weakness. He stood tall, though his body still trembled from sickness. Jalira felt her chest burn. She saw the path in front of her. If she stepped aside, the warriors would kill him. The elders would be satisfied. The order would be complete. But if she blocked their path, everything would change. Her honor, her place, even her life could be taken from her. The silence stretched. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then Jalira moved. She stepped in front of Daniel. Her blade left its sheath. Not against him, against her own people. Gasps filled the clearing. "You dare," one elder hissed. "You raise steel against your blood for a stranger." Jalira's voice shook, but it was steady enough. "He is not a stranger." Her tribe stared at her as if she had spoken madness. "He builds," she said louder. "He gives. He saves. He is not destroyer. He is not invader. He is human." The word felt strange on her tongue, but strong. The elders' faces hardened. Humans bring fire from the sky. Humans take. They do not give. You are blinded. Jalira shook her head. "I saw him face the storm with his hands. I saw him feed the beasts of the forest. I saw him plant seeds, though he may never eat them. He is more than we believed. If we kill him, we kill what he carries inside." The warriors shifted uneasily. They had all heard of prey. They had all fought enemies. But none had heard of a prey who built homes for others. Daniel stepped forward. His voice was soft, broken, but he spoke. Words in his strange tongue. They did not understand, but the sound carried meaning. He touched his chest, then the earth, then lifted a small pouch from his side. From it, he poured seeds. Small, simple, nothing more than life waiting to grow. He held them out to the elders. The elders looked at him as if he were offering stones. But the warriors behind them stared longer. Seeds. Growth. A promise that tomorrow could be different. One elder raised a staff. "This is trick. He feeds you with lies. He will spread his kind. He will bring ruin." Jalira's jaw tightened. She dropped her blade into the dirt. The sound echoed in the clearing. She stood tall, empty-handed. "If he brings ruin," she said, "then I will answer for it. My life for his. My blood for his. But I will not kill him, and neither will you." Silence. The wind moved through the clearing. The trees swayed. The sky held no answer. Finally, one of the younger warriors stepped forward. He looked at Daniel. He looked at Jalira. His voice was quiet. "If he plants, let him plant. If he builds, let him build. We will see what grows." Others murmured in agreement. Not all. But enough. The elders scowled, their power tested. But even they could not silence the voices of the tribe when they rose together. So Daniel stayed. Days turned to weeks. Weeks into seasons. He built more shelters, with Jalira at his side. At first, only for the two of them. Then for others who dared to believe. He showed them how to weave tighter roofs. How to boil water to keep sickness away. He planted more seeds. Some grew into food. Others grew into trees. The tribe learned. Slowly. Carefully. But they learned. And Jalira changed too. She no longer walked only as hunter. She walked as guard, as teacher, as bridge between her people and the human. One evening, as the sun painted the jungle gold, Daniel stood beside the first tree he had planted. It was taller now, its leaves broad and strong. Children played under it, some with the red marks of the tribe on their skin, others carrying pale faces like Daniel's. Jalira watched them run and laugh. For the first time, she saw no line between her people and his. Only life, shared. Daniel turned to her. He touched his chest, then pointed to the children, then touched his chest again. His meaning was clear. This was home. Jalira thought of the night she first saw him. A weak man, coughing, building a shelter in the rain. She thought of the blade she had almost drawn across his throat. She thought of the second blanket he had offered her, without fear, without doubt. And she understood. He had not only built a shelter for himself. He had built a shelter for them all. The seasons changed. The jungle shifted from endless rain to burning heat, then back again. Yet the small clearing where Daniel and Jalira had built their first shelter no longer looked the same. Where once there was only mud and broken branches, now stood a village. Shelters of wood and leaf. Gardens of fruit. Fires that burned bright but safe. The tribe had not lost its ways. They still hunted, still painted their faces, still sang to the spirits. But something new had been added. Daniel's hands, his strange knowledge, his quiet belief that life could be more than survival. At first, only the young listened. Children curious about the human with soft skin and bright eyes. They followed him, learned his simple tricks. How to boil water. How to weave baskets strong enough to carry stones. How to make fire without waiting for the storm. But slowly, even the older warriors began to watch. They saw the plants grow from seeds. They saw the shelters stand against storms. They saw sickness pass quicker when the water was clean. And though the elders muttered, even they could not deny what their eyes told them. Jalira stayed by his side. Always. She hunted for him when he was weak. He built for her when her hands grew tired. Together, they taught the children, guarded the village, and built more than walls. They built trust. One night, Daniel sat by the fire, turning the small metal circle in his hands, the face of the woman he had lost. He pressed it to his lips, then looked at Jalira. His eyes asked a question she did not need words to understand. She touched her chest, then touched his hand, closing it over the circle. The past would always live with him, but so would she. Years passed. The tree Daniel had planted grew tall, its branches stretching wide over the clearing. It gave fruit each season, enough to feed children who had never known hunger. Beneath its shade, the tribe gathered not for war, but for rest. And those children, some carried the sharp eyes of Jalira, others the pale face of Daniel. They ran together, played together, laughed with voices that mixed two worlds into one. Jalira watched them often. Her chest filled with something she had never known on the hunt. It was not pride. Not victory. It was deeper. It was peace. But peace was not simple. Other tribes came. Some saw Daniel as a gift, others as a curse. They demanded answers. They brought threats. Jalira stood before them with her blade. She did not hide Daniel. She did not deny him. She spoke the truth, the same truth she had spoken in the clearing years ago. He builds. He gives. He saves. If that is a curse, then let this curse be ours. Some tribes left in anger. Others stayed. Slowly, the circle of trust grew wider. Not because Daniel forced it. Not because he conquered. But because he offered. Daniel never became a warrior. He never held a blade like Jalira. His body remained fragile, his voice soft. But his strength was in his patience. His courage was in his open hands. When storms came, he rebuilt. When sickness struck, he boiled more water. When fear rose, he planted more seeds. And each time, he proved again that weakness could hold a strength of its own. One evening, when the sun set red across the jungle, Jalira sat beside him under the great tree. The children played nearby. The fire crackled low. Daniel looked at her, eyes gentle. He touched the ground, then the sky, then her hand. His words were few, broken, but clear enough. "This is home." Jalira nodded. She did not need words. She had hunted across the wide jungle. She had faced storms, beasts, and death. But never had she known a shelter stronger than the one she found beside him. And so, the story of the hunter and the prey became something else. It was not about who killed, who fled, or who conquered. It was about who stayed, who built, who believed. Jalira once thought strength was only in blood and steel. But she learned it could also live in open hands and patient hearts. Daniel once thought he had fallen alone into a world that wanted him dead. But he learned he could plant roots even in the hardest soil. Together, they proved a truth neither tribe nor storm could erase. Even in the darkest jungle, even between the fiercest enemies, a shelter could be built. And in that shelter, something greater than survival could live. Something like hope. That night, when the fire burned low and the jungle sang its endless song, Jalira lay awake. She stared at the roof of leaves above her. For the first time, she asked herself a question she had never asked before. What if the elders were wrong? What if the human was not an invader? What if he was something else? Not prey. Not enemy. Something she did not yet have a word for. But something she could no longer deny.